Should we go, Nicola?
I think she's just letting in the last few people. Nicola, just to check before we start, have you, I know you've muted everyone, but have you also selected the option that they can unmute themselves in case they have questions? I'm hoping she... Nicola, you're muted if you're asking a question. Proving my point.
If someone needs to ask a question, can they stick their hand up by using one of the reactions? Because we've muted everyone so we don't get so much feedback.
Nicola, what you can do is if you unmute everyone using that button and then do it again, it will give you a little tick box, which then you can just, I think you have to untick it or tick it, I can't remember which way it is, to allow participants to unmute themselves, just in case someone has something verbal. I mean, after the second class, hopefully we'll all be quite verbal.
Don't worry. We'll work it out as we're going along. Right,
Great,
Nick,
okay.
over to you.
Fantastic. So hello everyone, my name is Nick. It's short for Nikolai. And I've been a partner for Waitrose for now 10 years. I started with them just to really get my head around what I can do while I kind of really find the proper job as being an engineer and design furniture. That was the plan. Soon after I realized that I absolutely started to love working with beers, wine and spirits with absolutely no knowledge. That was back in 2011. And with the help of some of my managers, they put me through courses, and I discovered that I don't have to go back to anything else because I absolutely love what I'm doing, and doesn't really feel like I'm working at all. And all I can really say is just I love food and wine matching, food and drinks in general, beverages. And if we have questions, please ask as many as possible. I will definitely try to answer them all. And it's just really a case of trying to be relaxed. I'm trying to break the rules on food and wine matching, because we don't have to really be really strict on them. It's just really a case of trying to encourage customers and everyone in general to really think about experimenting and trying new things as well, and understand maybe a few really little things which can really damage a pairing. But apart from that, it's just really a case of personal taste. And the session plan is going to be I'm trying to really see what really can create a fantastic pairing, what will be some examples of those amazing pairings, and also maybe to speak about what mistakes can be done when we speak about food and wine matchings, and what can really damage one of those. Even weather, for example, can be one of the reasons, and maybe again some examples of bad pairings, because everyone is speaking about good pairings, but not really as many maybe about what is really something which can be a bad pairing. Is everything sounding good for everyone? Yeah, fantastic, yeah. Brilliant. I believe everyone might have a glass. It obviously is optional, a glass of wine, which obviously can really help. I didn't manage to find my Sauvignon Blanc, which was part of the presentation for ahead of this tasting, but I managed to find the red Terre di Faiano, and as a white I'm going to use a Chilean Sauvignon Blanc, which I had at home. It's going to be a bit of a different profile, but I definitely know the French one really well, and I'm able to speak about that. When we think about food and wine matchings, usually I have an exercise which I do when I deliver events in customers' homes. And if we don't have any food in the front of us, if we want, we can get a bit of a salt. We can try the wine maybe together and see the profile of the wine. And after, we can go and try a bit of a salt or a bit of a cheese. That will work really well, or a bit of a charcuterie. And after, we're going to go together maybe and try the wine again and see if that profile of the wine is changed or no. Do we want to do that as a bit of an activity later on?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. What is really all about food and wine matching? We have to think about wine being, first of all, being in a way really complex and be a food wine. or some other wines can be more like really easy to approach on their own, just outside in a garden on a hot day can be a really great, but not maybe having that kind of a potential to create an amazing food and wine matching. And when I really speak about examples, maybe a bottle of Barolo, red, really heavy tannin, and an alcohol being really quite high, that is just really something which you definitely kind of need a bit of a food to go with. You can't really enjoy it on its own because it might be too big, it might be too full-bodied. Maybe in a winter day, really cold, you can definitely feel like that can be a great choice of a wine. But apart from that, maybe not as easy. On the other hand, something like a Sauvignon Blanc can definitely be more easy to approach and also can go really well with some particular dishes. What is really quite all about is just really to see the big spectrum of flavors as well, and trying to pair those as well, taking into consideration even cooking techniques, flavor profiles, for example, fattiness, sweetness, saltiness, spiciness, bitterness, and acidity. If we take all these 6 into consideration, we have to think about maybe if we have a mild Indian dish and we gonna add a wine which is really high in alcohol, that spiciness, which can be quite mild, might be really fiery. And it's a sensation maybe we don't really want. It's just a case of thinking of something how you can really calm down those spices. And that can be done by a bit of a residual sugar wine maybe, or a bit of a rosé can be able to be calming those spices down. Also, it's just really quite important if the dish is just really quite acidic, is to come with a wine with kind of a pretty much the same level of acidity. With sweetness, that is just really a bit of a different story. Sweetness in food is just really a hard kind of way of looking to be able to make great pairings. And it's just a case of trying to really get to see what is the profile of our palate. We all have different palates, and what really works for me, it might definitely not work maybe for everyone. And it's really always a case of trying to create pairings based on experience as well, and also dim sum method. If we ever talk about dim sum,
Oh, right, thank you.
sorry, was the dim
I
sum.
think we just need to mute Rosalind's iPad, please, Nicola.
Mute my iPad.
Oh.
They've asked me to mute my iPad.
It's okay, Nicola can do it for you.
Done.
There we go, lovely. Sorry about that.
No problem. With the dim sum method, it's just really a case of maybe trying small bits of food and with maybe a flight of wines, and understand what we really like the most. And that is just really my way of thinking about food and wine matchings, and just really be able to get into trying. We can maybe, if we have a bit of a white, we can give it a go to our Sauvignon Blanc.
I've been waiting for this since Saturday.
I'm really glad that I'm delivering events now from my home, and I don't really have to use a spittoon anymore. This one was always the case of being out and about, delivering in customers' homes, and using always the spittoon to be able to drive back. So it's finally a really good timings. Now I can actually taste and enjoy the wine. I really recommend to really always smell our wine. It might be something which we maybe not always do, but I really recommend doing it because it's just really a case of trying to get those flavors to see if they will be on the palate as well. We do taste with our nose. 66% of the flavors, aromas will be from the nose coming on a palate. And this can be an indication of really helpful kind of indication to see if the wine is confectioned, if it's natural, if it's having a really great depth of flavor as well. So with the white, we maybe, if we tried it already, we can see that Sauvignon Blanc naturally will have high acidity. So it's just really a wine which is really wakes up the palate and the senses as well. It's really refreshing, really great on its own. And in terms of trying to pair this wine with, can be a bit of a ghost cheese. Goat cheese can go really well. Naturally, what really grow together, go together. So goat cheese is normally a Loire Valley cheese from goats, and Sauvignon Blanc is from Touraine. That particular one we enjoy now is coming from Loire Valley. So it's just really because they grow together, they are actually going together as well. Other examples can be Manchego and Rioja, hard cheese with Tempranillo-based wine. Really can be quite high in alcohol, quite high in oakiness as well, but really a natural one. Also, if we think about Italy, for example, can be wines who actually are able to go with their natural dishes, pastas and pizzas as well, and all the flavors based on tomatoes and really quite high acidity. So we have to think about countries with a lot of history on food, including UK, and also to think about pairing them with the wines which are really coming from those regions as well. And also really quite important is just really to try to not think about meat in general, red meat, red wine, and white meat, like, I don't know, fish with white wine. Food these days is really much more complex than used to be, much more international. There are so many different ways of cooking techniques as well, spices and flavors. We don't have to kind of really think about just that. For me, most of the time, it's much more important to try to think about the side dish and the sauce for that particular dish as being more important than the actual protein. And as an example, if I have a sea bass and I try to cook it in 2 different ways, it's going to be the same fish, but one of them can be in a vinaigrette, kind of a lemony drive and herby profile kind of a dish. So really quite high in acidity. And the other maybe in a bit of a rich cream, butter, so much more texture and weight to that dish. And that choice of wine can be absolutely different. For example, maybe for something like sea bass cooked in that buttery and a fat-free cream, can be a Chardonnay maybe from USA, Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley will be really the go-to. And for the other one, which I mentioned before, can be our Sauvignon Blanc, my Chilean one, or even the French Loire Valley, which we might have in the front of us. So we can see how the same fish with different ways of cooking can demand a different wine. Also, we do know really well, I think, that in a day like today, really quite nice and hot. Hope everyone is enjoying the weather these days. We definitely crave for chilled drinks, chilled wine as well. And in a winter day, we want something with a bit of a spiciness to really warm ourselves. And if we think about the chameleon of meat, which is chicken, we can create so many different things with chicken. It's just really quite impressive. If we just take a roast chicken, for example, in the winter, we wanted the temperature of that food to be extremely hot to be able to warm ourselves, and the wine might be a Pinot Noir. And for the same dish, maybe as a really hot day, 25 degrees outside or something like that, we want that chicken to be really more like a picnic, quite a cold meat idea. And in that way, you can demand a bit of a Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc, depending on what else you are having on that picnic day. It's just give a bit of an example about how a wine can be so different depending on the temperature, depending on the cooking technique. When I speak about cooking techniques, it's just really a case of thinking about if it's going to be boiled, if it's fried, if it's maybe a barbecue or a Chinese or Indian kind of a dish. It's just always to take that into consideration. I know it can be really sounding really complicated, but it's just really following the weight and the texture and flavor of the dish to choose a wine. And it's really quite simple on some dishes and really more complex on others. But if we try to decode the dish, we might understand better what kind of a wine can go together with. And if we really kind of struggle, of finding a wine, I can give a few wines which might go with almost anything, because that's kind of the way they are really quite nice and complex. Kind of something like a Gruner Veltliner, an Austrian white grape, can go with so many different dishes. Even Riesling as well with a bit of residual sugar can be absolutely fantastic. And it's just really trying to think about the fact that one perfect pairing can be a bit of a mistake. We always been thinking about maybe this particular dish to go with that, this particular wine, and that will be the rule in place. But it might not be for the right audience as well. So maybe for those customers or for that particular occasion might not be the case. And it's just really trying to get to be more flexible on our choices. Does it make sense so far?
Yeah.
Any kind of a sign, if I go and I speak too much about the subject, or I can be really quite passionate about, I can definitely cut down on it. So
Can I ask a question?
yes, please, Nicola.
I'm craving 2 meals when restaurants open again.
Mm-hmm.
One is sushi.
Yeah.
And with sushi, I tend to drink beer because I don't know what wine to drink with it. And the other one is steak tartare. I've made it a couple of times at home and it hasn't been great, but what wines would you pair with both of those?
With sushi, first of all, we have to think about what is sushi. Is salmon? Is it raw or is it cooked? It's definitely raw. So we already kind of think about the sushi being really quite fatty in a way because of that fish kind of profile of salmon. And we are in a way okay to pair it with a beer because it's having that kind of effervescence. That carbonation really helps to cleanse the palate. But what I really recommend is, for example, a sparkling wine. So something like a champagne or even a cava will work absolutely as a treat for it, because of the fact we'll be able to really again create that kind of effervescence. The mousse will help to cleanse the palate and leave it really quite nice. And but really for my point, definitely champagne. Depending on the occasion, obviously after the lockdown can be a really fine dining experience.
Exactly.
Might be really a great bottle of vintage champagne, or even an English. I would definitely recommend even an English sparkling can be absolutely fantastic as well.
And what would you serve with steak tartare if I had steak tartare and chips?
With steak tartare, as a rule, in the future, we have to think about the dish. If we can we put lemon on top of it? If we can squeeze lemon on top of it, we can pair it with a wine high in acid. If we can maybe cook it with butter, for example, adding butter on top of a steak, we can go with a wine which is having a bit of an oakiness, a bit of a tannin like a red, or as a white with a Chardonnay with a bit of oakiness. So that's kind of the way to think about steak tartare.
Is it on an uncooked meat?
Yeah, so steak tartare.
Steak tartare, yes. Going back,
and I absolutely hate any Chardonnays.
any Chardonnay.
Yeah, so a steak tartare, you have it, it's got cornichon in it, it's sharp and acidic, and then it's just got an egg perched on the top, and then you have it with chips on the side. That's what I'm craving. So what wine would you serve with that? A white wine, wouldn't it?
I can definitely think about a white or even a red can be a Pinot Noir. A Pinot Noir can be high in acid. And maybe if we don't really like something with a bit of oakiness, because obviously can be definitely the case, which I understand already from the palate profile we've shared already. Can be maybe a Pinot Noir with maybe a New Zealand Pinot Noir, high in acid, and that will be able to go with the protein really well. With egg, it's just really a bit of a tricky, which is really can be quite hard to be choosing a wine for. And there are so many other examples, even garlic and something like that. But it's just really a case of thinking about the meat and the dish and decoding the dish and understand the profile of it, and after choosing a wine for.
Okay, I will try a Pinot Noir then. Thank you.
So, Nicola, what I'd like to
Yes.
do quickly, if Nick doesn't mind, I think as Nick has suggested the white wine that we're all tasting, and obviously we're all tasting it and probably making lots of and ooh noises silently, just as a book club style, could you just unmute the entire room for us? And let's all give our feedback to Nick on what we thought of his choice of Sauvignon Blanc. I know that Nick didn't get to taste it, so maybe he wants to hear from us what we all thought of his choice.
I tried it quite a few times, and I can speak about it really clearly because that's kind of, I have days when I try 80 wines and I can still really enjoy and walk after it. And
I mean, I normally, so I love Sauvignon Blanc, just me personally, and
Yeah.
I would always pick it in a bar. But when I'm buying it from a supermarket, I'm not going to lie, I do sort of like sway towards the £7 or £6 bottle that I find. So when obviously Waitrose, and you're very refined there and you do great wine selections. For £10, I think it's a really bloody lovely bottle of wine.
It's £20, £25
many times.
Well, what one is it?
Hang on. Whose feedback?
This is the Touraine Sauvignon Blanc that was on the wine list for selection. I don't know if you guys can see that.
funny.
So who bought the white wine? I got Prosecco.
I didn't get anything.
Sorry, I only got the red wine. I didn't have time. Only got
Did anyone get a different white wine that's not the
Yeah.
one that was suggested that they're tasting?
Hello.
Let's test Nick's skills then. Put that closer to the camera, Caroline. See if we can see if Nick's
Can't
familiar
read
with
the
this
label.
one. Here it comes.
Attitude, yes. It's
Good
really,
attitude. Yeah.
it's still a Loire Valley wine. In terms of comparing this one with Le Perrier, it will be much more treated as a fine wine. Will have much more complexity, and also compare with the profile of a Sauvignon Blanc, which is most of the time no oak, really citrusy green apple, and sometimes can be a bit of a gooseberry profile and a bit of a herbaceous profile. With mine, for example, is much more on a herbaceous profile. It's not everyone taste. I definitely get that, and it's much more hard to enjoy that. But usually can have a bit of a passion fruit profile, and hopefully we are able to see on that Touraine. So Touraine is just really a bit of a mixture of really citrusy, high in acid, and also behind that high acid profile is having a bit of a tropical fruit as well.
Thanks, Nick. Sorry for putting you on the spot there. I just saw some people were drinking different stuff. I got one more for you. I can see John Cripps, our wonderful president, seems to be holding a different bottle. John, what are you drinking?
Thank you very much for including me. I'm
Madhouse.
Sarah Cranston at weekends, as you can see, although it's not actually a weekend. She very sweetly, I only suggested this idea to Sarah Cranston used to be part of the chamber back in the day. If you remember Bet365 and all that history for her a long time ago. And she very sweetly poured me a Mudhouse New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, Marlborough, 2019.
Yeah, good.
Now, I'm normally a bit anti the whole Marlborough because it was too nettly. But this one's quite mild, and she tells me it's £7 in Tesco's.
It's on sale.
On sale.
It's on sale. I just ordered a case from Tesco.
We're not trying to do Waitrose.
No, COVID times and all.
So there we are. And actually, I'm normally a Pinot Grigio or Agave sort of drinker. And this is very drinkable. There we are. That's my
Nick, are you familiar with that one?
Absolutely. I tried that one many times. New Zealand is just really absolutely fantastic for their Sauvignon Blancs and all, especially Marlborough as a region. And we do sell that one in Waitrose as well. It's having that kind of a fresh cut grass, and if we go and do our gardening, we can get that kind of a sensation from when we cut the grass. It's definitely a great, fantastic wine for compare with French wines. Can have a bit of a more dryness. And New Zealand can be a bit more on a tropical kind of a profile of the wine.
I've muted us again. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nick.
Absolutely.
Anyone else have any wines they want to put forward before we move on? Wonderful. Nick, you passed all the tests there. Well done.
Thank you. I was feeling the pressure. Absolutely fine. Not a problem. We can maybe see if we enjoy red wine as well. And maybe if we bought this Terre di Faiano, which I absolutely love. with this wine, obviously, if we close our eyes and we just really smell the wine, we might feel ourselves in a holiday in the south of Italy, for example, or south of France can be can be the same sensation. When we smell this wine, we expect maybe a bit of a sweetness to come on the palate as well. It's having a bit of a barbecue profile, a bit of earthiness, and also a smokiness as well, and feels a bit raisiny. In terms of it's not really into a red fruit profile, it's more into a dark cherry profile, I would say. And if we go and actually try it, let's see what is the sensation on the palate. Can we see that what we have been able to pick on the nose, I think is just really very well translated on the palate. It's a wine which is enjoying a lot of sun. The grape is called Primitivo, which in America, in California, is called Zinfandel. Is a wine which I really recommend to be enjoyed with a lot of situations. Even on its own can be quite enjoyable, but maybe a bit high in alcohol for some tastes. I would definitely say that this wine with ribs or with burger as well can be really a great one to be enjoyed. And in terms of cheese, can go really well with Manchego, despite the fact Manchego is a sheep cheese from Spain. Can definitely go really well with the Gouda as well. This is just really obviously a great, easy in a way to recognize the style bottle because of the label. And as a matter of fact, in the last 2 years have been the best-selling red Italian red in Waitrose. And I guess it's quite easy to see why. Hopefully we enjoy this wine.
I've bought several bottles. So in America, do they make Zinfandel into rosé wine a lot?
Yes. With Primitivo, as I say, it was the grape which is indigenous for Italy, and most of the time will be coming from parts where they have a lot of sun. So this one on the north of Italy, it might not have enough. So that's the reason on the south will be having in Puglia will have enough redness. And it was taking over to USA, and it is called Zinfandel, as I shared. And it used to be a lot of it done in such a way of making rosés, maybe sometimes with a bit of a sweetness. But at the moment, I think they just really start to use in Lodi Valley in California. There is an absolutely magic example of a wine called Brazin. And that is just really absolutely delicious. Definitely a much more fine wine compared with this one because it's able to be enjoyed on a couple of more years after the vintage. And
I mean, it smells really smoky. Like you can really, I would just imagine myself at a barbecue sipping that. That's really good.
They do something really quite smart with the wine. Part of the wine is actually with their grapes basically. Before they press them, part of the grapes will be staying to really dry out a bit, kind of to get them quite raisiny. And when they press, there will be much more flavor getting out of it. If we are familiar with Veneto wines, Amarone, for example, they will do 100% of all their grapes that way to be able to create that style. With this one, it's around 20% do it that way. And it's really quite dark chocolate profile on it as well.
And has this been stocked in Waitrose for a long time? Is this one of your?
I think it's at least 4 or 5 years. Hopefully, I don't see a reason why to not really stay because it's just really selling so well. And it's just a case of thinking. But it is a cooperative wine. So it's not a proper, I don't know, family-owned producer. What they are doing, they try to really have a lot of farmers in place from south of Italy, which they will supply quality grapes to them to be able to do the blending.
So with the bottle, so I'm going to ask you some questions before we open up and do the whole thing. So I noticed with this bottle, it's slightly thicker glass. Does that have any bearing on the taste and flavour of the wines when they're choosing the bottling process?
With some producer, I think it's just really a smart thing which they are doing just to be able to give the impression that they are having a much more amazing wine in their bottle. So can be the thickness of the bottle obviously will be more expensive, and then can give that fine wine impression by the time you are actually have it in your hand. I think the wine obviously is not a fine wine example, but if it's on offer, it's around £7, and I think it's just really delivering a lot for the price. On a full price, it's just under a tenner. It's one of those wines with, for me, a lot of quality, even if it's going to be on a full price. But on an offer, I think it's just really, really delicious.
So there's a tip for us, Nick, then. So the thickness of the glass can always give away how good the wine might be, perhaps, or maybe not.
I had a situation. I'm not going to name a brand or something because I don't really want to damage any. But I had a wine which was really, really heavy. The bottle. I was just like, wow! You kind of really, as soon as you get it in your hand, you feel like you're gonna have a fantastic experience. And when you go and actually try it, for me, it was just really absolutely average bottle of wine, and the quality of it was just really definitely not worth the full price on it. I can just name the country. It was an Australian wine on that one.
Well, there you go. Nick, I wanted to ask you as well. You mentioned about the whites. You gave us a really good tip about a good white wine that goes with any food, which I think everyone's really grateful for. I'm sure Nicola's going to ask you for the name, and that's going to be emailed out afterwards, so we can always make good wine choices when we have dinner parties. What's a good red that you'd recommend that goes with everything, or the majority of things?
I think we have to kind of think about something to play it a bit safe as well, but depends on the texture, the flavor, volume as well of the dish. If a dish is just really elegant but really quite quiet as well, delicate, like seafood, for example, you definitely have to go for a white because it's just really not going to work. But if you have, I don't know, pasta can be a really good, even pizza as well. Pasta with a white sauce will go different compared with the red. To think about a wine which you might not want something really high in tannins, not really the most high in alcohol.
Can you explain what tannins are for people that might not know?
Yeah, sure. So tannins, let's think about making 3 cups of tea, and we leave the bag inside. For one of them, we leave it for 30 seconds, for the other one 5 minutes, and for the third one, let's say 20 minutes. If we go and try them, on the first, which is going to be 30 seconds, it's just going to be really quite light, more like a Pinot Noir kind of a style, I would say, with just really easy to approach levels of tannins, bitterness, basically, woodiness, extraction from it. If we go and visit the one which is 5 minutes, we might enjoy that cup of tea, and we'll obviously have much more concentration of that bitterness. If we go and actually visit the one which is 20 minutes or 30 minutes, it's obviously going to be quite impossible to drink that cup of tea because
we call that builder's tea.
Yes, and we have to think about grapes. If we think about white, 99% of them will not have any tannins because tannins is just really what you are getting from grapes, from the skin and from the pips. So that is just really the bitterness, which is extraction of it. But if we think about red, Pinot Noir will have the lightest one, or Beaujolais, which is Gamay as a grape, and those ones are more coming from cool climates. Cool climates will not have a lot of tannin extraction because of the time in kind of a way to cook those grapes will not going to be as high compared with something like a Malbec or a Cabernet Sauvignon. Or Tanat, for example. Tanat as a grape from Uruguay will have the most tannin levels I have ever seen in a red.
Brilliant. We've got a couple of questions, Nick, that we're going to come back to, and I'll do those at the end with you. But I think, sorry, Nicola, I don't know if I'm going to say this. Before, like we did last time, it'd be great, Nicola, to open up the floor because I know that I've seen some red drinkers. I know that Sue was drinking red, or did she? Is she still there somewhere? She was definitely drinking red. I think she was slicing cheese. It'd be good to know what red Sue was drinking. There she is.
Yeah, sorry. My Wi-Fi, I realised I was on the wrong.
Oh,
You know these people.
You've frozen again.
no, it's frozen. It's okay, Sue, when you come back, we're still here for you. John, you're drinking red. What have you got?
Wait. Oh, he's on mute.
My assistant has just unmuted me.
I think
so-
they unmuted us for you.
I know. I look as if I'm sort of
Can we bring the label over to the camera
Yeah.
for Nick again, perhaps?
This is,
wait and learn. Any minute.
so this is a.
Sorry, somebody else is talking.
Sue's trying to.
Sue's frozen.
Yeah, but hang on, is it my turn or Sue? Jason.
Go on, John, you go ahead, and then we'll come back to Sue shortly.
What I like, my nice host here in her steppy garden has would love to say something, and she had a. Or did you ask the question?
Oh, I put it on the group
I've
chat.
got your question, Sarah.
It was about.
Jason's going to address it at the end, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I know this is probably a bit unpolitic, frankly, but you're getting used to me as the years go on.
Can you get closer to the microphone, please,
Okay, there
John?
my assistant is about.
John, we can't hear you.
Yes, to get closer to the
Sorry, everyone. Do bear with John. He is our president, and we do love him.
You could hear me before, couldn't you?
Yes, now we can hear you much better.
Oh dear. Okay, that's a worry, isn't it? So there we are. You didn't use the glass sheet. So
What's it called?
It's
they're wrong.
M&S Classics number 20. It's a Côte de,
Not so
Oh, I
sweet.
love Côte de Rhone. That's one of my favourite wines.
Côte de Rhone Village 2019. This is. I had a delivery from them yesterday, and not to obviously detract from lovely people from Waitrose, but this I'm a bit of a Côte de Rhone. If you want an all-round wine that doesn't just sort of give you a whack in the morning headwise, I think I'm rather a believer in the Côte de Rhone. And I'd love to know what our lovely host would say.
And
about
what
Over to
kind of
you.
it goes?
Over to you, Nick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what sort of food goes with that?
With the Côte de Rhone, obviously we have to think what grapes will make a Côte de Rhone, and obviously is the most important one will be Syrah, which is Shiraz. The profile of it will have a bit of a spiciness, quite a lot of taste, I would say. Really delicious wines. Syrah will have that kind of dark pepper complexity, and in blend with Grenache will have the red fruit profile, and more into a kind of raspberry profile. What is the case of Côte de Rhone? They have loads of different grapes which they can use to create wines. Côte de Rhone Village as a style, it might not be as refined as Châteauneuf du Pape, for example, but they are really reliable wines, absolutely delicious. And in terms of food and wine matching, we have to think about dishes with a bit of a rich sauce, red wine sauce, really flavored. We have to think about if we want to enjoy them with a bit of a pizza, with a bit of a pepperoni cheese, for example, as to give an example. I'm not Italian, but I love pizza in different styles. If we want something more refined, we can definitely think about duck with a bit of a rich sauce to it. That will be just really absolutely delicious. Also, steak can work really well with the pepper and corn sauce.
There you go, John. There's your dinner ideas for this evening to go with your wine. Hopefully you know what you're going to eat now. And then we've got 3 questions. So Sarah Cranston, Georgina, and Sarah Houston. I'm going to come to you in just 1 minute. Just want to nip over, hopefully, to Sue, who I know did have a different wine. And if we can't do it this time, Sue, we'll come back to you on our next wine tasting.
I've tried unmuting her, but she's
No,
frozen.
I think I've chosen her at a time that it's frozen again. Was anyone else drinking any other reds? Jenna, what is it you're drinking there? Oh, hold on.
Am I? Hang on. Oh.
Yeah, you're unmuted. Hang on, you've just muted yourself, Jenna. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can,
hear
yeah.
you.
Great. So I bought a selection of wines that I hadn't finished before. Working my way
Oh.
through these because I couldn't quite get what we had before. Right now I'm on this, it's very common, the Campofrío Rioja.
Fantastic.
Delightful. And then I've got all these other ones, and that one's spattered in food already. From
Over to you then, Nick, on Jenna's Rioja, please.
Campo Viejo, as a producer, is really massive in terms of quality, also quantity as well, different styles. With Rioja, we have to think about having a lot of. I have the cheese, which will go absolutely fantastic. A bit of a manchego will be just delightful.
Nice.
And also something like a paella can work really well with a bit of a spiciness. Tempranillo as a grape will be able to, it's quite medium bodied, medium acidity and medium tannin, but the profile of the wine is just really absolutely fantastic. Depending on the style of Rioja, can go from a Joven, which is a young with no oakiness, really quite a young wine. Crianza, Reserva, and Gran Reserva. We have to think about Gran Reserva being the ones which is having more aging to it in both barrel and bottle before it's actually released, and usually will be at a minimum of 5 years. With Tempranillo as a grape is just really absolutely fantastic with a bit of oakiness. Even can go to a distance of getting even more flavor. I had Gran Reserva Rioja, which was 50 years old, and it was the best experience in terms of red wine.
Is that 50?
Yes, 50 years old. It was 1968, if I'm not wrong, something like that, 1960s. And really, really funny, as soon as the cork went out, I'm doing my diploma in wines in Oxford, and I'm just about to finish it, which is quite hard and amazing as well. And as soon as the cork went out, a sour cabbage invaded the room, and it was really, everyone was, I'm not even going to try this wine, I'm not even going to stick my nose into it, because it's just really, really bad as a flavor in the room. And I'm always the quiet guy in the room. I always kind of try to make notes and have a relationship with the teacher and with the wine. And socializing, it's almost on zero, because I'm not there. I didn't spend £5,000 to socialize with everyone there. I just want to get as much out of the course. And after, we can go for a coffee. I don't mind. So that will be absolutely fine. And I did say, look, guys, probably this wine stained in the, we always try blindly, so we don't know what is there. And I did say to the room, let's give it a try, maybe in a half an hour. Let's leave it in a glass. Let's play with the glass to really get to get oxygen into it, to really be able to proper kind of a decant in a glass. And we come back to it and see what we think. And honestly, I have goosebumps. You can't really see them, but honestly, if you've been here, you are able to see it. When I think about that experience, it's just really magic. And
that's amazing to think that something, because taste and smell are so linked, that something that smelt so horrible still tasted so good. But it's a bit like the Chinese, say, 100-year egg, where they make the egg into like a moldy cheese, and if you like that, it's the most amazing taste.
Absolutely. And if we, as I said on the beginning, I was an engineer and I studied quite a lot of math and physics and all that. And for me, wine and also cheese as well, wine is having life into it. If it doesn't have life, I use vinegar as well, and I love vinegar, but it's vinegar, basically.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick, so much. Hopefully, Jenna, you found out your wine is very lovely, although your leftover wines are really worth keeping and then drinking with us today.
Thank you. I am quite impressed with that. Definitely, it's delightful. It always surprises me that quite a reasonable wine is always so tasty. So I like it as a backup for when I've run out of fancy stuff. But
I'll be looking for that Rioja next time I'm out shopping.
I absolutely
sorry, I was late.
The sense of a glass as well is just amazing.
Okay, Nick, we've got a couple of questions for you, so let's move over to those so people can have those answered. The first one's from Sarah Cranston. It says, hi, Nick. At the beginning, you mentioned the fattiness of a wine. If I heard you correctly, I think it was fattiness. I've never heard of that term before. Could you please elaborate when appropriate?
Sure. When I speak about the fattiness of the wine, it's about the kind of a texture, the oiliness. If we think about Riesling, if it's coming from, I don't know, as a grape, maybe it's not everyone's taste, and I get that. But Riesling can be, for me, is one of the most amazing grapes. And if it's coming from Germany, it might be really quite low in alcohol and low in fattiness, I call it. If it's coming from Australia, you might think about enjoying that wine. I had to describe a wine, and they asked me, what do I think about it? And I say that I feel like I'm enjoying wine in a petrol station. It was having that kind of richness, that kind of a fattiness, oiliness as well.
Okay.
And it's just a case of thinking about food as well. It's the weight, the texture as well. The texture can be really quite light or really quite full. In terms of red wines, I think it's really quite easy to say that, because Pinot Noir, obviously, compared with Cabernet Sauvignon, it's really quite easy to understand. And that's what I mean with fattiness. But most of the time when I use the fattiness, I use it in the hexagon of flavors to describe food. It's just really a case of thinking about the 90% of all food and wine matchings will be good combinations. So just 10% of it will be just really bad. And to give a few examples, lemon tart and Viognier, maybe Cabernet Sauvignon and caviar, sweet and spicy with a lovely bottle of Syrah from Mark and Spencer, for example, is not going to work. Honestly, we don't have to buy wines just from Waitrose. I buy wines from everywhere where I'm able to find a great deal, for example. And I have an example, for example, from Lidl. It was a bottle of Pedro Jimenez style sherry, really quite sweet. I went, entered there, took a bottle, went home, and I opened it, because I always do that to try to see how it is, and poured a bit. And honestly, my wife was feeling like I'm crazy. And I did say, look, I'm just going to go back into the bunch. What happened? So I found an amazing bottle of wine, and I have to go and buy everything I'm able to find. And the problem it was I didn't find any other bottle there. And that bottle was around £8, but it was just only one time off. For us in Waitrose is a different kind of a profile of the way they do buyers, for example. They will just make deals with their suppliers, and we have wines which have been with us for 30 years already. So
Yeah.
it's just a case of taking that into consideration sometimes.
If you went a bit mad and bought too much wine, how would you store it at home? Because
you give it to the Chamber of Commerce, Nicola.
no.
The best place to store wine is definitely maybe under the stairs, where it's just really quite the temperature control environment. If we don't have a proper cellar, I don't, and I hopefully in the future going to have. And the worst place to store wine will be in the kitchen. I know I'm doing this in the kitchen. I have some wine on, but it's just sitting just because of the event. It's not sitting here because the temperature can go really high and low a lot. And if it's a cork wine, this can really damage the wine inside.
Wow, that's a great tip. So not to store wine in the kitchen, because that's where I put mine. I get home from shopping. I put my 26 bottles of Sauvignon Blanc straight on the side. There you go. Don't worry.
You should store bottles of wine on their side, shouldn't you? So even if you bought a case, you should turn the whole case on its side.
Depending on the wine, if it's a screwed cap, for example,
it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
There you go.
If it's a cork one, we definitely have to think about and trying to see if we can lay it like that, because if it's going to stay on a kind of a vertical position, the cork might start to dry out in case we're going to store it for 10 years, let's say. And when I say that the cork is going to dry out, it's not in contact with the wine, maybe. If it stay like that, it's going to be in contact with the wine. It's going to allow a bit of oxygenation, which the transfer obviously going to get the wine to develop more flavors with the time, if the wine is intended for such improvement. Because not all wines are made to go to a long distance. We have to think about the curve of Gauss. And when I think about the curve of Gauss, it's pretty much if we think about stairs and we go down the stairs, the place where the most is going to damage is pretty much in the middle, because everyone is going into the middle. If we think about as a hill, all the wines are starting young, and on the peak can be a few months, like it's a bottle of Pinot Grigio maybe, and that wine needs to be consumed quite fast because it's not going to improve, it's going to lose freshness. Most Pinot Grigios will be like that. There are a few examples which I can speak as well, which are absolutely fantastic. But Pinot Gris, which is maybe like the mother of Pinot Grigio, can be going to the distance for 20 years. So it's just a case of thinking about the peak. How long is that distance going to take? So for this wine, for example, as an example, can be enjoyed now and maybe in the next 2-3 years. It's not going to improve, but it's able to keep the flavor. For these
I
wines,
don't think mine's going to last even 20 minutes, if I'm honest with you, Nick.
No.
Absolutely.
Same here.
But I have a wine, which is this one. I bought it on an auction as well, and this one was opened 2.5 years ago. I have still the cork inside, and how much wine I still have left is just really that much.
Wow.
And it's just a case of thinking about that as well. With some wines can be delicious now, but can go to being absolutely amazing in 20 years. Maybe
well, Nick, you've really chucked the cat amongst the pigeons there, because obviously everybody loves the saying, you know, like a fine bottle of wine, and now you've brought in the term fattiness. That really does change when someone says you like a fine wine. So we'll just leave that there, move to our next question. So we have a couple more questions to go. So we'll try and speed these along. We've got Georgina Lewis. Georgina says, hi, Nick, can you recommend a red and a white choice to take to somebody's house as a gift, say if you're going to a dinner party? I know we spoke about some wines already, Nick, that you mentioned earlier on. If you were to choose 2 wines, and I would definitely say from the Waitrose collection, because this is being recorded and our friend Nicholas Broad's going to see it. If you could choose 2 wines from Waitrose shelves, 1 red, 1 white, what would you pick?
Yeah, that's really a great question, Georgina. We have to think about some grapes which are really quite versatile, and most customers will absolutely enjoy. If we think about a white, for example, we're definitely not going to go and get a Gewürztraminer, which is a grape really quite unusual and really an acquired taste. What we might go and take, we might go and take a Sauvignon Blanc, maybe the one which we have now. And the reason why is because Sauvignon Blanc is really in fashion with everyone. It's really easy to approach on its own and really easy to approach with food as well. So I would definitely recommend the Sauvignon Blanc. Can be a South African or can be a Loire Valley from France. That will be the choice. Or agave. Agave will be really fantastic as well. If we want a bit more premium, can be a bottle of Chablis, which is Chardonnay. I know some customers might have the say of anything but Chardonnay, but everyone loves a glass of champagne. So in a way, Chardonnay it is maybe the main grape in champagne as well.
And then for red, Nick?
As a red, maybe a Malbec from Argentina. They're really in fashion at the moment, and everyone just really enjoy that.
Is there a good value priced one at Waitrose that's good to take?
Red, I would definitely say maybe a Catena Malbec. Catena Malbec is a fine wine. Honestly, if it's, I think it's on offer at the moment. I'm not gonna say something wrong.
No, it's okay.
But, I'm not working in a branch anymore. And that's the reason why I don't really know exactly the prices. But definitely, that is just around £10. And honestly, if you are friends with those persons, they might be considering you a family after. So.
Listen, I've taken Blossom Hill to a party before, so that's a great tip to change that. Nick, we've got a question from Sarah Holston. Hi, Nick. Is it possible for the palate to change? I used to enjoy Sauvignon Blanc, but no longer enjoy enjoy. Favouring now a Chardonnay instead, for example.
Palate change is 100% happening. Maybe for some more than for others, but definitely happened for me as well. I definitely say that while you go and experiment more, you're gonna allow that change of your palate to happen more fast. I used to be really against some of the wines, and I now absolutely love them. So it's just really a case of thinking about that, and also we go and change the palate based on the food. So we might think about, in the past I used to hate ginger, and now I use it all the time. And it's just really a case of thinking about that as well.
I think you touched on that earlier on, that the food really does elevate the wine and the wine elevates the food. It's more of a partnership, I suppose, which is fitting with the Waitrose partnership. I suppose that goes quite well. This is quite a good question. I don't know if you've seen this one. Can you suggest what would be best for someone who's a vegan or for vegetarian food? Are the wine suggestions the same as you've made already? Or would you say for that sort of palate and that type of food, there must be specific vegan wines, I imagine, but for vegetarians?
Yes, that's really coming to. We have a really fantastic book in Waitrose. I'm not sure if you ever seen this style book before.
You put it closer?
It is free. It's our Bible for wines, let's say. And what I really recommend with this one, if we use it, we can go
Sorry,
inside.
Nick, is that available from Waitrose and you can pick that up for free, or do they charge you for that?
No, it is a free guide for all the drinks we have.
Wonderful.
And I do know, for example, this red is vegetarian and vegan friendly and organic as well. So this one can be one considered. And usually with every single wine, it will have, I will try to really make it really quite close. You might be able to see a V from vegetarian and vegan as well, the leaf, and close to the wine. Let's see. I'm trying to put the laptop really quite far away to be able to get a bit of a presentation of the table. So that's the reason why. So,
I just have a quick one on that. If I go onto Waitrose.com, could I look for drinks list? And do you think that I could put that in my shopping basket and they would?
Yes, we can definitely go beforehand into the waitroseseller.com, and waitroseseller.com, it will give that information there. And after we can go to waitrose.com, not always will be as up to date. And we always have to think about vintages sometimes being changed. The wine, it might not stay vegan all the time. Depending on the winemaker, might make different decisions to be able to.
So sorry, just to clarify, so a vegan wine that might be somebody's favorite can change from a vegan wine to a non-vegan wine if they were to change the process.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I did not know that. Sarah, as it was you're the last person to speak, your question's next. I was going to do this one without shaming you, but here we go.
Shame away. I used to live in Las Vegas, hence.
Okay, so you're absolutely fine with this. Nick, here it is. Ice in wine. Is it a cardinal sin or is it justifiable at times?
I don't know. Maybe some of you might hate me by saying it, but enjoy it the way you like it. I'm not a winemaker. I'm not going to be offended by doing it. And if it's really a hot day outside and you really need a bit of extra chilling, just remember that if you add only one ice cube, it might go like an ice cube in the sea is going to go water really fast, and it might change obviously the concentration of your wine. Wine might become quite watery. But if you had 3, 4, 5 ice cubes into it, then it's just really going to be a case of chilling the wine really fast. So
I love you, Nick.
Nick, thank you. Nick, I've got a couple of other questions that I'm going to come back to. Sorry, I realised I was pointing at the camera there. Which are, I want you to answer in quick fire succession. So you're going to get 10 seconds to answer each of these questions. And then after these questions, we'll go back to Sue, because I think Sue's now got a good internet connection, so we can check out what red wine she was drinking from earlier on. So these are your quick fire questions. So firstly, what's the difference in production of the organic wine and which one would you recommend?
Difference is just really the case of thinking how those grapes are grown. It's just really a case of how those winemakers treat their land to create the wine organic.
And your favorite organic wine?
I will definitely say the one which I enjoy the most now will be Terre di Faiano.
Oh.
And a lot of Rhone Valley. Rhone Valley will be absolutely fantastic.
Rhone Valley. Perfect. Thank you, Nick. Do Waitrose sell many English wines, and what would you recommend?
It's the biggest selection of English wine from all the retailers. And the one which I absolutely enjoy the most is our own Lackford estate, sparkling. We are the only retailer with vineyard plot. So.
And then your final question from the team is there an online version of the wine guide booklet?
Online, just by using the Waitrose seller. Actually, I'm going to use this with my managers to hopefully try to think about making one. The challenge is based on the fact that vintage are changing, and not always a winemaker might notify us about it. So we have to go and chase them up. And that's the reason why an online version is not going to be quite easy to be created, because
you'll be updating it every 10 minutes.
Sorry?
You'd be updating it all the time with all the changes that are going on.
Basically, yeah. And we have to take that into consideration.
Great. Okay, so we're going to go over to Sue, back to our red wines from earlier on. Sue, can you let us know what red wine you've been drinking this afternoon? And hopefully Nick can tell you a bit about it and what food goes really well.
Yes, thank you. It's this one. Can you see that? It's a Rioja.
I'm not able to,
Close enough.
see it too.
It's
Yeah.
is it Cune? C-U-N-E?
Yes.
And it's a
C-U-N-E.
Reserva 2015.
2015. I don't see the producer.
Yeah.
See if I had it. Kune, yeah?
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
I think,
The
yes.
producer is
I have started to have
Okay.
goosebumps again because Kune is the producer, which I had the 50-year-old Grand Reserva. So the Grand Reserva had more aging to it, both in obviously bottle and oak, compared with the Reserva. It's my total favorite producer on Rioja.
And what food would you recommend to go with that bottle, Nick? I don't know if you know it specifically, but a 2015 wine, 5 years old, it must have quite some nice flavors to it.
Absolutely, it's having obviously a bit of oakiness, and because of that fact, is a Rioja style. And I would definitely recommend a steak, quite a good piece, maybe kind of a rare pepper and corn sauce as well, and big chips. If we are vegetarians, we can think.
Yes.
Yeah. Are we?
Are you vegetarian,
Yes.
Sue? Yes, she is. Yeah.
Yes.
I recommend something based on mushrooms as well, and in red tomatoes as well. Would be able to really create that, and maybe barbecued, because that flavor of a smokiness can come.
So, Nick, I'm not going to go into it in detail, but I just heard you say that the way that you cook your steak also changes the flavor. So you said rare steak with that, as opposed to medium or well. So even the way you cook your food can change the flavors of what you're eating or what you're drinking.
Yes, because I introduced that term of tannins. If a wine is having a high level of tannins, and if we want maybe the steak to be cooked quite rare, because what is the tannins is just really blend very well with the fibers of the meat. And just before I finish, I want to mention as well umami flavors. Umami flavors are the next level, the three-dimensional in terms of food. And it's just a case of thinking Parmigiano, for example, will be an example of umami. Also soy sauce. We have to, if we, for example, we add a mushroom on top of the steak, then we have to think about a different wine, because that will be an umami experience.
But it's different mushrooms as well. So sun-dried tomatoes is umami, but tomatoes aren't.
Yes.
And then the Japanese mushrooms, I can't remember what they're called, are umami, and it depends. It's like the flavor that just changes the whole thing without overpowering everything.
Absolutely, and it's just really so delicate that it's just really adding that complexity, and it might be the finish on as soon as the dish is just really kind of not on the palate anymore. It's like the wine is leaving a food stamp, and it's just really kind of leaving that flavor to last for a long period of time.
Thanks, Nick. So I'm just aware that we're coming up to our hour, so I know that people may want to just disappear or come back. I know that Michael wants to have a quick chat. I just think, just to end your section before we go on to maybe, if anyone has any questions that you want to ask verbally, you can do that, obviously, if you're still staying around. Nick, I just want to ask, so I've never done this before with Waitrose and Partners, but what an amazing, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the whole board and all the people here, what amazing insight into wine, and virtually over a camera with us, just some bottles here. Tell me about you. Like, do we find people like you in our local Waitrose store? How do we get in touch if we have questions? If we want to do a massive wine party, which I'm sure some of our members might, tell us about that.
We have loads of specialists in branches, some of them more passionate than others. And I would just really say that I'm not based in one branch anymore. I worked in 4 different ones. But it's just a case of thinking we deliver events in customers' homes, obviously before the lockdown was the case. And I delivered over 100 last year. Not as many locations, because on some of them I've been many times. Waitrose winetasting.com is the place. Even my face is there, which is really quite cool, I guess, for me at least.
So you come and do this in people's homes, is that right, Nick?
Yes, yes.
And
so,
you bring the wines with you, and you bring the glassware and everything else?
I remember when we started, I had to go and travel to London through tube as well, and with glasses as well, with bags. Now it's much more easy, so the wine is arriving to the customer. with the glasses, and I just pick the food, which is basically some charcuterie and cheeses and olives, and I just deliver because these ones we need to be as fresh as possible. So I kind of really get them in on the day.
Great, thanks. I'm sure that Nicola's going to share those details, how we can do that. I'm moving to London in 2 weeks, back into the zone. And I'm definitely going to book a wine tasting for some friends. But I think now let's go back to Michael. Thank you so much, Nick. Sure. Michael is our chairman for those that have met him. And Michael, go ahead.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Nick. So I've actually got a question for Nick. So the Chamber's having a Q&A session with Felicity Buchan, the MP for Kensington, and Councillor Fawkes from the Royal Borough, on Thursday, the 25th of June, I think it is. What would you recommend red wine just to have a casual drink with that? And you're talking to important people and asking questions of them. What sort of wine would you recommend for that?
Would be a red or a white?
I think
not a rosé then, Nick. No.
Rosé, honestly, if you want to go and have a bit of Indian cuisine, a medium spice, I recommend the dry rosé from Provence. And if you don't like it, just really let me know and I will pay for the bottle. What about that? Going back to the question from you, Michael, I think an English sparkling I would definitely recommend. Something like a glass of Nightingale would be really fantastic, or even a still white. Reason why is because it was quite obviously a challenging year, and we have to kind of think about rewarding our winemakers.
Supporting our wine industry, you're absolutely right.
Excellent, thank you, Nick. So yes, that's the Thursday, the 25th of June at 5 p.m. If you ever want to ask any questions of Felicity Buchan, the MP for Kensington, or Councillor Fawkes from the Royal Borough, this is your opportunity. So come back in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite. Also, in case the lockdown is still going to be on till then, maybe a wine from, I don't know, South Africa to make us feel that we are actually in a holiday. So,
Nick, when we're back and we're working as a fully functioning chamber, we'd love to see you in person.
Yes.
And I hope to see you again.
I would love to come over. We can speak with Nicholas as well, and I'm sure something can be organized.
I think everybody here had a great. Put your actual hands up if you had a lovely afternoon with that.
Thank you so much.
It's been terrific. Thank you.
It was definitely my pleasure. So absolutely love the questions. Really a fantastic group. I absolutely love doing it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for attending.
Have a fantastic evening. And I think I can log off now, yeah?
Great, yeah. See everyone in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
2 weeks, did you say?